All right. I never know how to start these things. I'm not like a "what's up, everybody" kind of guy, but I almost feel like you have to. Anyways, hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Darren Rigo. I'm a freelance photographer and filmmaker up in northern BC, Canada. Today I wanted to make a quick video, I hope, providing I don't ramble too much here. But it's a video that, I probably would have found useful 4 or 5 months ago as I was considering buying another camera, either a second Z6I or upgrading to the Z6II. And I don't really know what I'm going to title this video yet, but basically it's going to be sort of like my 4 or 5 things that I think people should consider. This title already kind of sucks, but 4 or 5 things that I think to consider, or reasons why you might consider upgrading to the Z6 over the Z6I. Probably going to workshop that title. And just a bit of disclosure up at the top here, I am part of Nikon Canada's Z creator community. This video isn't sponsored, it's not an ad. I bought this camera and this camera with my own money. But just so you guys know, and that's out in the open up at the top. The second sort of like piece I'll say up front is that this video is going to talk a lot about why the Z6II, which is this camera that I'm filming on, is amazing. But in no way does that discredit this guy, the Z6I. They are both awesome cameras. I use this camera, almost every day. It is my B camera, it's my backup camera that I use for pretty much every shoot I'm on. So both cameras are wonderful, but yeah, I still think a video that kind of outlines the highlights of the Z6II and kind of those reasons why you may consider upgrading, or if you're looking for a second Z camera, you would choose the Z6II. Get my little phone out here. Reason number 1, and I have to imagine if you're even watching this video, this is probably something that you are considering, is the 2 card slots. Now, that was probably one of the biggest criticisms of the Z6I when it first came out, was that it was a 1 card slot camera. It took 1 XQD card. And for myself, as someone who is a wedding photographer, or even a lot of the commercial shirts, a lot of the commercial shoots I do look for shooting a redundancy, just for my peace of mind. If anything ever happened to the card, I want to make sure that those images are preserved and have a backup copy on site. And so that was something that Nikon took into consideration when making the second iteration. They threw in a second card slot. It's an SD card slot, not a second XQD, which for me is actually amazing. I have probably like 20 SD cards that I thought I was going to have to retire forever that I now get to use as my backup cards for this camera. And that reason, it's not going to matter to everyone. If you're not doing wedding films or wedding photography, or working in an environment where you need that redundant copy, you're probably not going to care about that. But I know there is a whole subgroup of people out there that really, really, really needed that, and that specific issue is solved by the Z6II. So it has to be reason number 1, 2 card slots. So reason number 2 is that the autofocus system in the Z6II is a significant upgrade over the Z6I. I'm going to put this thing down, just throwing it around. Bit of a hand talker. The autofocus system in the Z6II is unquestionably better for a number of reasons, and I'll highlight a few that I just think are worth mentioning, but you could easily spend a whole video just talking about the autofocus system. Number 1 for me is eye autofocus in video, and as you can see, this thing is following me very well. That was always something that I struggled with the Z6I, is doing even talking head pieces, but specifically things like weddings or some of the commercial work I do where there's a lot of movement away and in front of the camera, and you could use single point autofocus and it would kind of work, but you'd always have a bit of anxiety, especially if you're not standing directly behind the camera. Like a lot of the time for talking head pieces, I will be standing right there interviewing and they'll be speaking to me, meaning that I actually can't keep a constant eye on the back of my camera to see that the autofocus system hasn't shifted. So seeing those little yellow boxes drawn around the eyes and just knowing that it's locked on and it's good is huge peace of mind. The autofocus system, beyond just that eye autofocus in video, is just all around better. It has a better performance in low light. A lot of that is due to the dual X-speed processing, and I'll talk about that for the next one, spoilers. But yeah, you'll just notice it's snappier, it locks on, it holds on. I'll just conclude this last part by saying, and I'll probably get some shade in the comment section for this one, but every single firmware update and every iteration of the Z line series, I do think Nikon is getting closer and closer to Sony, to Canon, and their autofocus systems, which, yeah, we have to be honest with ourselves and know that Nikon's not quite there yet, but I do think that they're getting there. Number 3, which I did just allude to in the last one, but number 3 for me is that the image processing pipeline in the Z6II is just miles better than the Z6I. And that's not going to matter for everyone. Kind of like that 2-card system, this is not like a deal breaker for every single user. But the Z6II does have that dual image processor pipeline, which does mean that you do get a much faster clear of your buffer. And so in those moments where you're holding down the shutter, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I believe if you're shooting raw 12-bit, shutter fully pressed down, you can hold that thing down for 9 seconds on the Z6II and not fill up the buffer, where I believe it was only 2 or 3 seconds on the Z6. For me, I do some sports photography in wedding moments that are really critical, like that kiss and the really critical moments. I am a shutter held down button, and I'll just snap 90 photos in a few seconds just to make sure that I have the right, correct, eyes open, smiling faces. And this was a big deal for me. So again, not for everyone, but a really important one for those out there that need that really fast clear of the buffer and who do need to do that continuous shooting. Number 4 is not like a huge deal breaker for many, but it is improved battery life in the Z6II. The Z6II uses the latest iteration of the EN-EL15, I believe it's EN-EL15C. Could be wrong, should have written this down. But it does have about 20 minutes longer video shoot time, and I believe it has, I think it's like 350 shots versus the 300 of the Z6. It is noticeably better. I do find my Z6 on like wedding days or commercial shoot days, I do have to swap that battery a bit more regularly than I do my Z6II, and that's even using it as a backup camera. Not a deal breaker by any means. I think the battery life on both the Z6 and the Z6II are fantastic. I haven't really ever had major issues with that original Z6, but for myself, as someone who does have to sometimes be away from my camera bag for a few hours on weddings, or for doing a commercial shoot where I have to drop the bag and move a few hours up a hill or up a mountain, I do rest a little easier knowing that there's a bit more juice in this guy here. Number 5, the last one, is the Snapbridge firmware updates. And this one, kind of sounds like I'm nitpicking, but if I'm being honest, this one's actually one of the ones that's like most important to me. Updating the firmware on the Z6 original or any of the old Nikon cameras was a bit of a hassle before. You have to like clear an SD card or XQD card, put it into a computer, make a specific file type or file, download the firmware, take it out, put it into the camera, load it. It's a whole thing, and it feels kind of like you're gonna break the camera if you do it wrong. Whereas with the Z6II, you just connect it to your phone, open up Snapbridge, update the firmware, and it happens right away. Again, it sounds like I'm being nitpicky, but for those out there who know, you probably know that like updating the firmware on your camera is such a pain in the ass, and just being able to hotspot it to your phone and have it done in a few moments is like amazing. That's it, guys. This was a super quick video. I hope it comes together into something that's useful for you guys. I did want to point out just a few other odds and ends between the two cameras. It didn't really fit in anything, but just things that I think are worth noting. And I'm just going to do these ones pretty rapid fire because, I don't think any of these are massive. But number 1, USB power transfer to the Nikon Z6II, so you can actually keep it charging while you're shooting video. And again, if you have ever been on a long shoot where you need to keep your camera running for a few hours, that's a pretty big deal to me. 4K 60 frames per second. The Z6II could do 60, but only at 1080p. So that's pretty situational, but I do a lot of real estate videography, and having the ability to bump up to 4K at 60 frames, which is what I do most of my real estate work in. Big deal, very big deal. And then the last one is one that I actually haven't had a chance to try out yet. So I mean, this probably maybe could be in the sort of top 5, but the Nikon Z6II does have time lapses built in. I did just order like a little rotating pillar thing, so I hope I can do a few of those. Maybe I'll do a separate video about those, but yeah, those are just some other odds and ends that I think are worth mentioning. I think that's it. Yeah, love to hear you guys' thoughts on the Z6II versus the Z6. You can do that below in the comments. I usually try to answer most of the comments because I get 20 per video. But I love talking to you guys. Yeah. I think that's it. Thanks guys, bye.